So what is the Night of the Murdered Poets? It's a commemoration of August 12th, 1952, exactly 70 years ago today, when leading Soviet Yiddish writers and cultural figures were falsely convicted in a sham trial and murdered. This is the date that's officially commemorated, although not all of the victims were poets or writers, and not all were murdered on that date. The terrible persecutions and murders included the disappearance of writers in the 1930s, exile, torture, imprisonment, and staged accidents. These writers came of age during a tumultuous time. They experienced the First World War, pogroms, the Russian Revolution, and the Holocaust. Most of them actually left the Soviet Union at some point, but were unable to realize their literary goals and returned. The Stalinist government used Yiddish as a tool for political propaganda. Yiddish writers were, quote, expected to help create a secular Yiddish culture that was a fundamental part of the Kremlin's plan to wean the Jews from their religious and cultural ties. I'm quoting from the book Stalin's Secret Pogrom. With government support, Yiddish literature and the press were heavily censored, and even the language's Hebrew and Aramaic origin words were obscured. But these writers still hoped that they could flourish. These writers and cultural figures were also affiliated with the Jewish Anti-Fascist Committee, a group developed by the Soviet government during World War II to get Jewish support and funds for the war effort. They even traveled to the United States. But after the war, the Soviet state accused and convicted 13 Jewish citizens of nationalistic activity and espionage and murdered them on August 12, 1952. I also have a personal connection with August 12th. My dear friend and mentor, Shura Volovets, Zichroina Livrocha, studied at Solomon Michol's theater school as a young woman. When Michols was assassinated, the school was dissolved. Shura fled to Odessa, and that was the end of her Yiddish singing career until she moved to the United States 30 years later. I was extremely fortunate to know her and learn from her directly.
It's an incredible honor to present some of the gorgeous musical settings that have been composed to these words of these martyred Soviet Jewish poets. The first song, you can find the words in your programs on page 6. The first song tells the story of Nachman, a Luftmensch, a person with his feet not quite on the ground, who is entrusted by his boss to go to the market and purchase oxen, and perhaps some presents for his wife and children. Along his journey, he encounters a group of klezmorim, or musicians, playing and singing a beautiful, captivating melody. He asks them how much they would charge if he wanted to purchase this nigun, or melody. He pays the money, and he goes on his way, happily singing this sweet tune that fills him with so much joy. Not long afterward, he encounters another group of musicians playing a different melody. He is enchanted with it and knows he must have it. He asks how much they would charge. He pays the outrageous amount they suggest and continues happily on his way to the marketplace. Once he arrives, he begins bargaining for oxen, only to realize that he has no more money left in his wallet. He's thrown out of the market and goes home, where his wife sees him and says, "Hey, Nachman, where are the gifts that I've been waiting for?" He opens his mouth and he sings to her one of these melodies that he loves so much. It's a very expensive melody, obviously, only to receive a really good smacking in return. Right after that, Nachman's boss shows up and he says, "Where are my oxen?" Nachman begins singing to him another of his melodies, only to be shackled to a post and beaten within an inch of his life. But throughout all of the harsh punishment, Nachman continues to sing and seems oblivious to all of it. Leib Kvitko, the poet that wrote these amazing words, was one of the most celebrated poets of his time, having been awarded the coveted Order of the Red Banner of Labor Award by Stalin himself in 1939, and having been an important member of the Jewish Anti-Fascist Committee. Kvitko's works have a universal nature to them and celebrate the lives of ordinary people. He was especially well known as an author of children's poetry. He again was executed on August 12, 1952. An alter Nigen.
Scheint euch der Pan zum Schores. Na ja, Kumarsch und Käufoxen dem Porres. Und Nachten genuen, das Beitel mit Geld, dem Stock in der Hand und gegangen in der Welt. Geht, wo das Stade der Set und passt sich liegen und singen an Nigen. Und tut sehr fremd, ei, husche Leid, wo's kostet als Anliegen bei heintiger Zeit. Sagen die Pasticher, 7 Perioden tut Nachen bezogen und geht mit Nigen sein Weg. Lei, 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 la, la, lei, 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 lei. La 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 la. Geht und erbeutet der Set und Klezmer dort liegen und singen an Nigen. Vergessen in Poren zu Rinder, und Weib und Kinder. Und tut sehr fremd, ei, freudige Leid, wo's kostet das Anliegen bei heintiger Zeit. Sagen die Klezmerlach, 13 Perioden tut Nachen bezogen und geht mit Nigen sein Weg. Ist so in den Markt gekommen, hört wie schöne Ochsen brummen, nimmt sich Dingen und wieder Dingen und patschen mit die Händen und unter zu springen und abgemacht. Schleppt raus das Beitel mit Geld, treißelt ihm ab und gar nicht aus. Zoll, schreit der Seucher, Zoll, weste mir, klepp, weste kriegen. Sie nimmt unsere Nachmen die ledige Hand, öffnet das Mäuel und singt sie an Nigen. Ai, dai, 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 ai, dai, 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 ai, dai, 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 dai. Kommt hin zurück und die Rinder, kommt man kein Zweig und die Kinder. Nu, was hast du Nachmen gebracht uns zum Weg? Wo seinen Mann, die Matrones, ich frag. Begt rein, fahren Weibel dem Kopf, öffnet das Mäuel und singt ihm auf. Tralalai, lai, 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 tralalai, lai, 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 tralalai, lai, 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 lai. Nimmt das Weib die Haare auf sich reißen, mit dem Quatsch in den Mann tut sie schmeißen. Da kommt der Porritz und stellt sich weg, und auf die Ochsen tut ihm frei. Hebt Rauf zum Porritz dem Kopf, öffnet das Mäuel und singt dem Moll. Zum Slug mit der Ritter im Schinden steht gebunden, die Beischoffen springt, aber der Heulen sein Nigen sieht. Ai, dai, 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 ai, dai, 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 ai, dai, 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 dai. Thank you.
Shmuel Halkin was born in Rahachov in what is today Belarus. His name appears 2 times in the program tonight, representing his deep and prolific writing. Shmuel came from a family of writers. He was the youngest of 9 and educated by older siblings who were Yiddish enthusiasts. He studied painting at an early age and soon moved to poetry. Early on, he joined a Zionist group where he was inspired to write Hebrew poetry, in addition to his published Yiddish poems. Though criticized in some Soviet circles for his attachment to biblical or Hebrew motifs, he continued proudly culling from poetic material from, quote, what he knew. During World War II, Halkin was a member of the Jewish Anti-Fascist Committee. In 1949, he and other members of the Anti-Fascist Committee were persecuted for their membership. In a peculiar turn of events, Halkin was sent to a camp of less harsh treatment due to his having suffered a heart attack following his arrest. From the YIVO Encyclopedia, the leading Yiddish poet Avram Sutzkever praised Halkin for his aesthetic perfectionism, which expressed itself in the measured balance of the word and expression. According to the American critic Nachman Maisel, Halkin was one of the most complex and sophisticated, deepest and most Jewish Soviet Yiddish poets. Shmuel Halkin's poem Tiefe Gräber, Deep Graves, is a heart-wrenching, painful poem of the Holocaust. Tiefe Griebe, roite Lehm, Chob amol gehat in aheim. Deep graves, red clay, there was a time I had a home. The poem evokes imagery of the earth and of death. Yet somehow, through this horrible pain, the end of the poem is cautiously hopeful. Kommen wellen gute Zeiten, wird das Mazel euch sich beiten. Surely good times are coming, and our fortune will be changing. The Yiddish and translation is on page 7 of the program. Tiefe Griebe, roite Lehm, Chob amol gehat aheim. Frühling pflegen Seder blien, Halbzeit pflegen Vögel ziehen, Winter pflegt dort fallen Schnee, jetzt der Blätter, Wind und Weh.
So mein Heimatbruch getroffen, Tier und Teuer seinen offen, vor die Rutschen, vor die Schinder, die was keulen kleine Kinder, die was hängen auf die Skenen, die was schade wenn nicht kennen.
Tiefe Griebe, roite Lehm, Chob amol gehat aheim. Jor noch Jor seinen Ariber, Fuhle seinen jene Grieber, und noch reuter ist die Lehm, jene Lehm ist jetzt mein Heim. Dort liegen meine Brüder, die zerrissene Aufglieder, die geschochtene in Stub, die geschossene beim Grub. Tiefe Griebe, roite Lehm, Chob amol gehat aheim.
Kommen werden gute Zeiten, wird das Mazel euch sich beiten, werden wehen, werden linder, werden wieder wachsen Kinder, werden Kinder spielen Räuschen bei die Knochen von die Kräuschen, bei die tiefe Vollgrube, aus der Wind soll nicht arriben. Tiefe Griebe, roite Lehm, Chob amol gehat
The poet Itzik Pfeffer was a passionate supporter of communism since he was 19 years old. His poetry and books often highlighted major historical events of Soviet Jewish and general Soviet history. He romanticized about the masses of people who would gather to fight for the revolution, giving praise to Stalin as the main decision maker who, quote, already sees the directions which the world will follow and shows the world the way with his hand. As a member of the Jewish Anti-Fascist Committee, he and Solomon Michols toured the United States, Canada, Mexico, and England in 1943, raising more than $30 million for the Soviet government, and speaking at a rally for 50,000 people at Madison Square Garden, where he portrayed the Soviet Union as the ultimate homeland for the Jewish people. Pfeffer's brazen poem, Ich bin a Yid, I am a Jew, was spoken at that rally and demonstrates his proud identity as both Jewish and Soviet. Years later, in 1952, this same poem was used as evidence against him in the trial that ultimately cost him his life. Tonight, we have the incredible privilege of hearing an excerpt of Itzik Pfeffer himself, reading an excerpt of this very poem, Ich bin a Yid, at that massive gathering just a few blocks away from here, 79 years ago.
Der Wein von deures dicken Deuer hat mir gestarkt im Wanderweg. Die Beise Schwert vom Pein und Treuer kann nicht vernichten mein Vermög, mein Volk, mein Glauben und mein Blien. Sie hat mein Freiheit nicht geschmied, unter der Schwert hab ich geschrien, ich bin Aid. Nicht Paare Schläg, nicht Titus Homen, oben zerbrechen ihm gekennt mein Stolz Gemüt. Es tragt mein Nomen die Ewigkeit auf ihre Händ. Mein Schwung ist kleiner nicht geworden auf schwarze Scheiters von Madrid. Es schaut mein Ruhm durch Zeit und Jahren, ich bin Aid. Wenn so der Mitzri eingemäuert, mein Leib im Wind hat weh getun, und hab verseht mit weh die Reuert, en aufgegangen ist a Sohn. Unter der Sohn hat sich zezeugen, a Weg mit Budikes Baschid, sie fliegen stechen mir die Augen, ich bin Aid. Die 40 Jahre von nur alt Leben, was hab gekränkt im Midbarsand, ob mein älter Mut gegeben. Bar Korbes Ruf hat aufgeflammt auf jeden Kehr von meine Leben, und mehr von Gold hab ich verriet, die Eingesparkeit von mein Seiden. Ich bin Aid.
Der Wein von teures dicken Deue hat mich gestarkt in Wanderweg. Die Beise Schwert von Pein und Treue hat nicht vernichtet mein Vermög, mein Volk, mein Glauben und mein Blehen. Sie hat mein Freiheit nicht geschmied. Von unter Schwert hab ich geschrien, ich bin Aid, ich bin Aid. Der kluger Knetsch von Rabbi Kive, die Chochme von Jeschaias Wort, haben gelehrt mein Durst, mein Lieb.